Okay. Having clicked through that acceptance, let me share this screen with you. So this is, I'm going to, even though, this is not, it's probably not the way that most of the case studies are going to interact with RAiD. I thought the best place to start would be with the web app, the UI that we've built for it. Just because it's interactive, and you can see the you can see the metadata schema sort of in action, and what kinds of things are expected. And in fact, let me go ahead and go into the edit mode, because that'll give a little bit more additional information. So, essentially, like, right now we're just in the process of transitioning from handles to DOIs. I believe that we're getting this from the DataSite DOI server now. That was the last time I talked to my developers. It was going to be we were going to be minting, so it shouldn't actually say handle there, I think, anymore. But they'll now be DOIs through DataSite for this, which should also then integrate us into the PID graph and a number of other things as soon as we go to production with it. We're on their test server for DOIs right now, so it'll be a DOI, and a subset of the metadata is going to be then submitted to DataSite metadata, and from there it will flow on into the PID graph. And also the project dashboard that they were developing for their Fair Workflows project. Otherwise, just to give you an idea how it works, we've got a mandatory start date and an optional end date. We have titles. You can have multiple titles, so this is an alternative title. We've just got it set right now to auto-populate with lorem ipsum text, just to keep, just to show how things work. You can also, because we know that projects will change titles. This has happened to me a couple of times on projects. We do keep a record history of all changes, but we've kind of elevated titles so that you can have a start and end date on a title, and bring on a new and change the title of your project, but still have it be easy to search. It's easier to search the top level stuff than it is the stuff that's in the record history. So likewise with descriptions, we can have multiple descriptions. We're going to be expanding this. We haven't got the we're expanding the description and title types out somewhat as well, so it's not just primary and alternative. So title, description, I'll go through this pretty quickly and just try to point out some of the sort of features of how things work. With contributors, we have, and these vocabularies, so a number of these will be under the control of the local registration agency. So that would be SURF going forward. So don't think you're locked in, to some of the vocabularies are closed, and some controlled vocabularies are closed, and some are open. The ones that you may need to customize locally will be customizable. And so, for example, we know that the common terminology for positions, this is sort of administrative positions on a grant, varies from one region to the next. So you can have a position. You can also flag someone as a leader and or a contact on a project. Start dates and end dates, which are tied to a position, because people you change positions but stay on a project. And then we've got roles, and this is more the substantive the substantive contribution using the credit ontology for that. You can add as many contributors as you want. Each contributor can have each contributor needs to have a single position at a single time, but can have multiple roles, as you see here. Similarly, with organizations, you've got roles, a single role for any given organization at a single time. If we put on an end date, then we could swap that to a different role. But of course, you can have multiple organizations. We will be down the road adding a human readable gloss to the. Right now, it's just the ROR, and we're just sorting out what approach we want to take to that, whether how much to cache, how much to rely on resolving on the fly. But there will be a human readable name for contributors and organizations in future. Probably the key part to the, and I'll just add a couple more. The key part that you'll be most interested in are what we call related objects. And these are any sort of input or output associated with the project. And for the controlled vocabularies, we've primarily used DataCite vocabularies here. We didn't think they were, well, some of our use cases indicated that there were things missing, in which case we went to other existing controlled vocabularies. One, for example, that repositories use, it's escaping me right now what it was. It's in the metadata schema. The origins of all the vocabularies and are in place, and I'm currently working on publishing all the controlled vocabularies in a proper vocabulary server here in Australia that will have mappings to the external reference that we used for, and that'll all be machine readable. It's in Research Vocabularies. It will be in Research Vocabularies Australia. It's all there. I'm just trying to get the URI pattern sorted out so that it's somewhat logical. As soon as that's done, that'll be published. So here you've got your various things that you could produce as outputs that you could use as inputs. We also have this third category of internal, which is meant for things like, let's see if I've got a it should be a data management plan or an output management plan. Let's say a workflow. But internal is for a data management plan, workflows, things like that. Which may eventually get moved to external, or sorry, to output if you publish them. But we, again, our use cases threw up scenarios where there was a desire to record an internal thing. We prefer use of DOIs, IGSNs, things like that, but we do have fallbacks with these two and to an archived website using like archive.org for things like, not all grants have a persistent identifier, but they may have an announcement page that then the preferred workflow there, in talking to some historians who do use the internet as a source, is to do an archive snapshot of that so that the link doesn't die, and and then put in the URL of the snapshot. And the other way you'd handle that with a grant is that the grant agency, you would put in their ROR and do it as funder, which hasn't been added. This was a late change to add to help manage funders. If the latest version of the metadata schema that I'll make sure is which is a priority of getting in here is at the I'll show you in a moment, metadata.raid.org, and it's got the most up to date vocabularies. I think, if I remember, this is actually my fault that they're not there yet, because the developers want to automatically populate the controlled vocabularies from Research Vocabulary Australia, and I am holding them up, but it won't be held up for much longer. So this is where you record all of your inputs and outputs. We didn't do any kind of named relationship here between the RAID and the input or output, because we think with this information, input or output, that there's an implied relationship. Because the RAID is designed for tracking direct inputs and outputs, not like, oh, there's a tertiary output that somebody, came across our project and it inspired them to do this. Now, the outputs are meant to be direct outputs of the project, on account of that, we believe that the sort of is part, has part relationship is implied, and that's what is going to be put into the excerpt of the subset of metadata that goes into the DataCite's own metadata. Will be a has part, is part of relationship for related objects. They're going to get, just to I can share this with you. They'll get the dates, title, description, contributors, organizations, related objects. It will be the related RAIDs as well will go into the DataCite metadata. So other things that we could do is, if there's a local or non-PID, non-persistent identifier, it can go in as an alternate identifier. This covers, for example, if you're integrating with a CRIS system like Pure, and Pure gives you an identifier for a project, but it's only locally unique, you can put it in here, and this is free text, and you can say this is a Pure identifier. So it would, it might look like, I think it's just numeric, and you can put in that it's a local Pure CRIS, or however you want to label that. Alternate URLs are for things like a project website, an open science framework page, anything that you want to link out to. And this is important, because what you're going to get with RAID is a more ORCID-like experience than you will with a DataCite or Crossref DOI. That all RAIDs in the first instance resolve to a landing page that's generated by the RAID system itself. And then if you want to go on from there to a project website, an OSF page, whatever you want to go to, that you'll do that through the alternate URL links that are provided. Related RAIDs have let you connect RAIDs to one another, as part, and is. Whoops, sorry about that. I should have hit. Let me. Don't tell me we're going to find a bug. Let's see. So. Sorry, I jumped down too far. Organizations, related objects. Yeah, there we go. It did work, luckily. So this is what lets you establish, for example, hierarchical relationships, projects to sub-projects, which I know for the German Climate Change Computing Center, for example, is critical. So let me switch back into the edit mode here. So related RAIDs is then where you will where you build those relationships. Other thing, just quickly to go through the last parts, access. We're allowing closed needs. We've made a decision, particularly with the move to DataCite. There are open and there are embargoed RAIDs. RAIDs can be embargoed temporarily, but for the time being, we've just made a decision that we're not going to support permanently closed RAIDs for now. And the other thing to bear in mind here is since we're almost certainly going to be minting our DOIs through DataCite at this point, that DataCite has essentially two states to a RAID: registered and findable. Sorry, two states to a DataCite DOI: registered and findable. If someone flags a RAID as embargoed, that means it will be registered but not findable in DataCite through DataCite's search and discovery tools. So if you go to Fabrica and you go try to search on it or something like that, you won't, if it's embargoed, it won't be returned during a search. But if somebody knows the DOI, they can resolve it. So, and I think that's about the level of, I don't know, secrecy that we're comfortable with at RAID. Our developers have built this to, web standards, but we're not investing in sort of real security to the level where I'd want commercial in confidence or defense research or something like that, where even the metadata about or the existence of the project itself is highly sensitive. So if it's embargoed, you need to add an access statement just saying, this is embargoed pending whatever, or embargoed to the to whatever the expiry date is. We're going to allow something like 18 to 24 months for the embargo expiration date. Subjects, right now, what you're seeing here is field of research codes, which are Australasian. We will work with SURF to implement whatever the whatever schema is used to describe subjects for, in your case. Whether I assume there's a Europe-wide one. If not, if it's national, we can talk. We'll sort it out one way or another. Right now, we're plumbing it. We're starting with the Australian Field of Research Codes and American Library of Congress subject keywords, but we expect those to have other keywords available. Sorry, other subject schemas available, and you've also got free text keywords as well. And finally, if research has any kind of geospatial dimension, geology, archaeology, ethnography, history, anything that's got a spatial, you can do a spatial coverage using either with the identifier. You can use either OpenStreetMaps, Gazetteer, or sorry, I'm just blanking out. GeoNames, geonames.org, those two, and we're happy to expand to others as well. So that's what a RAID looks like. The landing page will, if I just save this, the landing page will look like a somewhat streamlined version of this. The developers are just about ready with the landing pages, and then this is what the what the data looks like. We are going to implement the content negotiation approach that's used by DataCite and Crossref, where you can choose whether you want it in XML or different flavors of XML, different flavors of JSON. Right now, this is just an open API. JSON is what it's in right now. But in the next year, we'll have it available in additional formats. So that's RAID. I will show you the principal way that most of you will be interacting with RAID, I expect, is through the through the API. This is the Swagger rendition of the of the API, and right now you can read a RAID, you can list the RAIDs. Put is to modify an existing RAID, and post mints a RAID to from scratch. So if you want to, I didn't think to do this ahead of time, but well, if you want to see how it works, I can grab a UI token from here. Sorry, an API token from here, and maybe I can even let's see if this works. It looks like it might actually have worked. I didn't. So if we want to list the RAIDs, maybe list might not have been here we go. So yeah, that worked. All the RAIDs, and of course this is a very long block of JSON, but this is all the RAIDs associated with this service point. And I could talk in a moment, I can talk about what the structure of, like the administrative structure of an instance of the RAID service, what it's pretty simple, and won't take too long. But what you're getting here is all of the, if I go to, it's all of the RAIDs associated with a particular service point. In this case, RAIDO, which is the demonstration one that we use for most things. I can set, if any of you want to play around with RAID, I can either give you access to RAIDO, where we have the most sort of fake data in it, so that you could look at that. Or I can set up a separate service point for you so that you can use it in a bit more earnest. So yeah, that's what it looks like. Just let's see, what else can I tell you? So just quickly, the structure, how RAID works. RAID is a federated system. The Australian Research Data Commons is the global registration authority that sets policy for RAID and establishes registration agencies. Registration agencies are the organizations that actually run the RAID service and instance the software. We're running it at the ARDC as the registration agency for Australasia. CERF will be our second registration agency, and our goal is to collaborate on the same code base in GitHub, and then just deploy it to two different. We use AWS here in Australia at the ARDC initially for, say, the first 9, say for, let's just be safe and say for 2024, we'll probably be running we will be running CERF's instance in an EU zone of AWS, but then we have a longer term, medium term goal of moving CERF off of that and onto their own infrastructure. We just have to rebuild some of the things that we're relying on AWS for to accelerate our development and deployment. So the registration agency, like CERF, will run an instance of the software. And then CERF will establish what we refer to as service points, and that's essentially the shop front at a particular organization. And it's also an administrative sort of division, a box within the RAID service, where if someone is a service point administrator, they can view and edit all the RAIDs associated with that service point. They can also acquire API tokens. They can onboard users of RAIDs. They can elevate those users up to service point admin level. So it's an administrative division within the registration agency. We figure that in many cases there'll be one service point per university or research organization, or like if we do an integration as is planned, with the EOSC marketplace or something, we'd set up a separate service point for that. So it's not, it takes literally seconds to set up a service point. We don't need to ration them. They're easy to set up whenever we need an administrative subdivision within the RAiD service software. So so that's the structure. ARDC is the registration authority, various registration agencies, and then each one can set up service points. There's a little bit of nuance that we're still working out with DataCite on prefixes, because we want people to be able to be generous, liberal with the allocation of prefixes. DataCite is doing some development to make that easier right now. So that's the start. And as I mentioned, the registration agency in the software, in the service software, that's what generates a landing page. And so the DOI will resolve to a landing page at the particular registration agency. Cross-registration agency search in the short term will be handled through the DataCite metadata while we develop our own federated search.